If something needs fixing, by yourself you'd get beat. Oh, oh, family, to help when this town turns up the heat. Oh, family, out here on the streets. Got that? Family, it's what really matters. Bad keeps getting better. Get you back on your feet. Oh, family, tell a secret, you got to stay discreet. Oh, family, out here on the streets. Okay, sure. Friends might have your back. Friends might keep your train on track. Ha! But friends are only friends. Family is family until the end. Family means business. If a battle needs winning, by yourself you'd get beat. Yes, I said family. Without them you're incomplete. Oh, family, out here on the streets. Alright, let's go. Show's over. Ugh.
You need protection out there. Don't walk the streets alone. You can't deny that you're scared. You know you're on your own. You need some peace of mind that I can help you find. You only just need to sign upon the dotted line. Make you a deal you can't refuse. Alone or safe with us, I'll let you choose. Make you a deal you can't refuse. So tell me what you've got to lose. There are no angels out there, just demons on the streets. This city doesn't play fair. We'll help you play for keeps. The terms are here defined till acts of God's divine. You only just need to sign upon the dotted line. Make you a deal you can't refuse. Alone or safe with us, I'll let you choose. Make you a deal you can't refuse. So tell me what you've got to lose. You can't trust anyone out there. We can protect you. I know you're scared. You want some peace of mind. Make you a deal you can't refuse. Alone or safe with us, I'll let you choose. Make you a deal you can't refuse. So tell me what you've got to lose. A deal you can't refuse. Alone or safe with us, I'll let you choose. Make you a deal you can't refuse. So
shall dine. You could have it all. Don't be another casualty. You can join our family. Immortal. Don't you want some of this old money? Don't you wish that you could be somebody? You can stay forever young and lovely. Drink forbidden wine.
Forbidden fruit that you can bite. Follow temptation like the tide. Why walk when you could fly? You could have it all. Join us and rise above the rest. It only takes one kiss on the neck.
Immortal. Don't you want some of this old money? Don't you wish that you could be somebody? You can stay forever young and lovely. Drink forbidden
Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun.
Don't you want some of this old money? Don't you wish that you could be somebody? You can stay forever young and lovely. Drink forbidden wine. Don't you want some of this
The lyrics of this could use a little work, but in terms of a vampire luring you to the dark side or the decadent side, there's no arguing that this tune is hella good. Anyhow, let's get started. Last time we tapered off because I just ran out of energy after doing all the blue cards. We are now doing black and red. I assume this will take just as long. And of course we have the music in the background. Let's actually lower the volume of that so it's not as overwhelming. There we go. Alright, let's start off strong, or kind of. For Mythic Rare, I'm not too impressed by Angel Suffering. That's 5 mana for 5/3 flying. If damage will be dealt to you, prevent that damage and mill twice that many cards. Now, a 5/3 for flying with flying for 5 by itself is nothing special stat-wise. For black, the lack of like health is it's about as anticipated. My problem is this is coming out. Did this pseudo damage prevention mechanic is coming out as late as turn 5 minimum with a deep investment in black, which means that you're not losing life, which means you can't trigger a whole bunch of other stuff because you're preventing that damage. And you're probably playing a deck that's already inclined to mill itself out in the first place. So as a finisher for a black control or black centric temple deck, I'm not too impressed with this. Like, what's this actually trying to prevent? People pinging you? Like, every shock is then worth 4 cards for your library. They're probably, well, there are plenty of graveyard recursion mechanics that will happily see a stuffed graveyard. But you should have plenty of that by the time you cast this out. So in the end, you're left with a creature that dies really easily and ultimately doesn't seem all that worth putting out on turn 5, whether in constructed or limited. In fact, if anything, it's even worse in limited, because 40 cards is actually kind of restrictive. You get hit a couple times with this not blocking, and you're gonna deck yourself out. I would pass on Angel Suffering, honestly, in any format she's being played. This is a little more interesting. Body Launderer, 4 mana for 3/3 with Death Touch, so already it's hard to block without losing something big along the way. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, Body Launderer collides, so it gets even bigger. When it dies, return another target non-rogue creature card with equal or lesser power from your graveyard to the battlefield, so it replaces itself. That's not too bad. It discourages interactions with your other creatures, and when it is gotten rid of itself, it should ideally be able to replace itself every time, right? So you're not going to put this into a dedicated rogue deck, because any rogue creatures obviously cannot be targeted, but ninjas are A-OK, any artifact creatures are A-OK, enchantment creatures by and large are A-OK. It's an interesting card. I wouldn't be too disappointed to drop this on a limited deck, but is it powerful enough constructed? There might be a rogue deck there, especially one that's... let me think. Maybe not, honestly. Maybe not for limited. Not for constructed, I mean. Because getting... like, it's sort of impacting when it lands, but because it needs combat interactions to get anything out of it, there's a bunch of ways to skip town and not meet with the Launderer. So, overall, not too happy, honestly. I played if I was playing a rogue deck just to have the recursion, but by itself, it's not too interesting. Cemetery Tampering for 3 mana, enhancement, enchantment for Hideaway 5. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may mill 3 cards, then if there are 20 or more cards in your graveyard, you may play the exile card without paying its mana cost. So this enables your disturbs, your flashbacks, makes it a lot easier to trigger your pseudo threshold from New Capenna, which is just a matter of having 5 different mana costs among cards in your graveyard. There are a lot of formats that want that constant self-mill. Modern especially is more than happy to have any mechanics that guarantees that your graveyard gets stuffed really, really fast. Because graveyard interactions can't be countered very easily. It's not as if Stifle's a legal card in the format. And yeah, overall, the 3 mana is a little restrictive for that. I think you might actually want to just play cheaper cards that just instantly toss the stuff into your graveyard. But by itself, if there is a graveyard interaction deck in Pioneer or Standard, this would be a key card to force it through. And triggering the Hideaway, honestly, for such decks should be pretty easy too. The fact that it digs for 5. The fact that it digs for 5 is honestly pretty good too. You should be able to get a pretty beefy spell out for pretty much free. Like, imagine just like digging 20 cards out and suddenly dropping a huge like dragon in front of their faces. That's nice. It's not too bad. It's definitely more of a constructed card than is a limited card, obviously. Given that you're not certain of the quality of the cards you have in your limited deck, and are uncertain of how the quality of your graveyard recursion in particular, you definitely don't want to be picking this up early without any idea of what's going around the table. But as a constructed card to enable graveyard-based strategies, pretty damn solid. It's interesting, at least. It's a sort of card that you can imagine have plenty of opportunities to break the game, or at least make the game very, very one-sided. Always fun. Corrupt Court Official. This implies that New Capenna has a functional court in the first place to corrupt. That's interesting. When Corrupt Court Official enters the battlefield, target opponent discards a card. There's a lot of cards like this. It's a very common for 2 mana and 1/1 chump blocker. That's just how it is. There's nothing exciting there. There's also the some kind of scarab in Neon Dynasty that has the same effect. So if you want to play black control and just like strip their hand rapidly while having board presence, I guess you might run this. It's not exactly exciting, but it does the job. The unfortunate thing, of course, is that target opponent discards a card, which means that they get to choose which card to discard. So you're never going to get their priority targets, but you do get to keep their options limited on turn-by-turn basis. Nothing exciting though. This is definitely sacrifice fodder for other cards, just to get like more of a 2-for-1 advantage by being able to copy cards with the sacrifice mechanic. I forgot what it's called. It was I'll find it soon. It's definitely in black. Cricket Custodian is a 3/2 that comes into the battlefield tapped. If this comes out early, the fact that it comes out tapped doesn't really matter. In fact, I would say this is not much of a drawback in the first place. So you get undercosted three attack power to go through, because most of the time you're not going to be blocking early anyhow. Like, what would be the point of blocking early? You do still have the option to block things that have only 3 health and tear them down for cheap. But this is definitely a limited card overall, right? Very playable limited though. If you were drafting like 2 or 3 or even 4 of these, you're not too unhappy, because that's a lot of cheap board presence with only a very minor drawback that early on you really don't care about anyhow. Cut of the Prophets probably has the best art and mechanic and the art and flavor synergy, in that they're literally cutting gold bars out of this poor bastard's backside. Like using magic, looking like magic paint here, to literally transmute his flesh into gold, which is a very, very, very literal take of blood money. Oh, here's a mechanic. Casualty 3. So you need to sacrifice something with 3 or greater power. You draw X cards and lose X life, and then you do that twice with Casualty 3. So if you're playing this as a 3 mana sorcery, for instance, and you sacrifice something with 3 power, you're drawing 2 cards and you lose 2 life, which is honestly not great. This is a lot more interesting if you're trying to hit a certain life threshold, and draw a certain, like, if you can afford life and the cards, and you're paying 4 mana for this with 1 casualty sacrifice, I would say you almost break even, because it has 4 cards for 4 life. 6 cards for 6 life is probably better, but that gets steep. This is not worth playing. I just really like the art and its implications though. That's a hell of a thing to do to a person. Cutthroat Contender, however, is when things get really interesting, because it's a single mana for a 1/1, pay 1 life. Cutthroat Contender gets +1/+0 until end of turn, activate only once each turn. So obviously that very last line is a necessary mechanic, or else you're just like blowing them out by paying 19 life on turn 1 and suddenly you're winning. No, that would obviously be bullshit. This is the vibing section of the stream. Hell yeah. The music's just so good, man. I did not like Neon Dynasty's music too much. Just lyric-wise, there were some real clunkers in trying to meld the lore that they're trying to represent with the world they're representing. I feel like New Capenna, the OST they made for this set, works a lot more naturally. But anyhow, Cutthroat Contender. I draft this. This is excellent. It's basically a 2/1 whenever you need a 2/1, and if it's just gonna jump block, you don't need to pay the life. And because it's a vampire warrior, it interacts with a whole bunch of cards in prior sets very, very well. So you get a 1-drop that interacts with a whole bunch of stuff in the game that's otherwise really, really powerful. Like I would not be too upset about picking this late into a draft, or just like slapping this into a vampire themed deck. Like, this is excellent for Vampire Tribal. Deal Gone Bad. 4 mana instant. Target creature gets -3/-3 until end of turn, and target player mills 3 cards. This is more of a constructed card than I would say. No. It works for both. It works for both. It's a must-have pick if you are tempted to splash any amount of black in limited. It's not too good in constructed, but only by a little bit. If it costs 2 or 3 mana, like 3 mana max, it might even be constructed playable. Because -3/-3 is hugely impacting. It tears down a whole bunch of stuff in the meta and the overall game, really, because 3 is already a pretty big number magic-wise. but the mill effect interacts with a whole bunch of stuff that you kind of want to see going to graveyard in the first place. So yeah, this is almost great, but it's absolutely solid for limited. If you see this in your pack in limited, or if you see this being passed to you in limited, you know that the player next to you is not going black, and you should be probably going deep black to take advantage of that. Because the only reason not to pick this up is if they happen to have a turn 1, pick 1 bomb to pick up. This thing won't win you the game, but this will definitely get rid of any threats along the way. And it's instant speed too, so there's nothing to it. Demon's Due is probably the best card draw for limited in the game. Scry 2, then draw 2 cards and you lose 2 life. So you get to control the quality of the 2 cards you drew versus the Blue's equivalent, which was to basically draw 2 cards and look at your opponent's deck. The peak is kinda okay, but being able to control the quality of the cards coming your way is a lot better. And this happening at instant speed too. Like, that's great. You get to leave some mana open to deal with the threat. If they don't do anything interesting, you plunk this down, you lose 2 life, but you gain a huge card advantage. Absolutely pick this up. This is almost as good as a kill spell. Dig Up the Body. 3 mana, instant, casualty 1, mill 2 cards, and you may return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Given that you can sacrifice a token to pick up 2 cards from your graveyard to your hand, that's honestly pretty good. The casualty mechanic here really rewards you for having a whole bunch of like chump blockers and easy to remove and inconsequential creatures on your board that are either just there to act as a speed bump or have Ghost to Graveyard effects that you want to take advantage of anyhow. And Dig Up the Body is a great way to take advantage of all of that and your graveyard at the same time. Basically using it as a secondary library. That's good. That actually might even be standard playable. I'm not sure if it's powerful enough for Modern or Pioneer, but if there is a black deck in the current standard meta, this would definitely go in. Like, it's effectively, if you're playing like black aggro, it's effectively drawing 2 cards off of casualty. That's and instant speed too. The instant speed is the best part here. Like, you can dig up the body in response to something dying to a kill spell. That's amazing. Definitely playable. Absolutely playable. Would I play personally? I'm not much of a black player, so I'm not sure if I would. But if there's a black deck I can figure out in this meta, that has to go in. It's just, it has way too many applications. Dust Mangler is a 7 mana 5/4. As an additional cost to cast a spell, sacrifice a creature, discard a card, or pay 4 life. When Dust Mangler enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices a creature and discards a card and loses 4 life. So this would be a very swingy black control mono black card that I'm not sure is necessarily swingy enough. Like, the additional cost by itself isn't too bad. You're pretty much happy to pay the 4 life in most circumstances, except near the very, very end of the game. But by then, discarding a extra land card, for instance, doesn't hurt too bad. It's the fact that the opponent has to do all of that when you only have to do 1 of that really kind of makes it busted. The 5/4 presence is whatever. The fact that you are doing a whole ton of damage to their board state is what's interesting. I'm just not sure if it's enough. It's only 1 creature, it's only 1 card, it's only 4 life. If by the time you have 7 mana, they're down to 4 life, you're doing your job pretty well, so it might be a good way to finish it. But I have to think that there are much more interesting things you can do for 7 mana. We'll see. It might be playable. If there's a black control deck, a mono black control deck in the meta, this is not the worst. This is not the worst. We'll have to see. Extract the Truth. Target opponent reveals their hand. You may choose a creature, enchantment, or planeswalker card from it. That player discards that card. Or you can have target opponent sacrifice an enchantment. So, God, I love this song. Until Sid is Burning. So good. For the card, I like the flexibility. I don't like that it's 2 mana sorcery. But as a bit of expensive, like, As a bit of expensive duress, it's playable, and as a way to get rid of enchantments that black otherwise has no way to target, it's actually pretty good. There are a couple archetypes, however, that neutralizes this. Anything with an enchantment creature heavy basis can pretty much shrug off the secondary effect. But playing this on turn 2 is something I don't think I'm going to hate. It loses, I wouldn't even say it loses too much value later on as long as they have a hand to go by. But I would say this is more of a constructed sideboard card than anything else. I would not be too happy to see the, well, no. I would actually be okay seeing this in my card pool on a limited basis because it does choose creatures and planeswalkers and enchantments, all three of which are either, like, creatures, obviously, it's limited. You're going to be playing a ton of creatures because there's no way to make a proper combo deck without creatures in limited. Enchantments, there are a lot more powerful enchantments now that Wizards understands the design space for enchantments and how powerful they need to be. Planeswalkers are all universally bombs in the limited format, so being able to strip their bomb out of their hand at the right time, at the right moment, that is definitely powerful. If you're lucky enough to do so, absolutely do it. So I would consider this a little less important than a kill spell would be in limited drafting priorities, but I would not be too mad to see it in my pool. It's definitely a sideboard card though. The target opponent sacrifices enchantment. If you're playing like black, blue something, for instance, black, blue, green, no, black, blue, red. If you're playing Grixis colors, basically black, blue, red, you have no ways to deal with enchantments normally because all these enchantment removal is in white and blue, or like bouncing them through. No, sorry, white or green, or bouncing them through the blue. So having a way to force him to sacrifice the enchantment specifically can be a pretty solid pick if it's otherwise out of your card pool. That makes it a really, really strong limited pick based on what the current meta is and how many enchantments you expect to run into. Fake Your Own Death, 2 mana instant until end of turn target creature gets +2/+0 and gains when this creature dies, return to the battlefield tapped under its opponent's control, and you create a treasure token. That's if it dies though. You don't get a token if it doesn't die. So this is a good way to turn a kill spell into extra loot for you, or to win a trade that you otherwise fail to kill the opponent's creatures with, and still gain a little extra when your creature dies anyhow. There was a very similar effect with green, with both black-green mana in the previous set that's still standard legal. That isn't as good as this because it only gains you life. Like, life gain is good and all, but I'd rather have the extra mana pretty much any time. So yeah, this is playable. This is definitely something I would be happy to draft in limited after I've made sure I have like a strong basis of features to work with. But yeah, tossing this out in response to a kill spell or to a bolster like a block. That's a great way to do it. Girdagoons. 5 mana for 4/4. When Girdagoons dies, create a tapped 2/2 black rogue creature token. Blitz for 4. If you cast a spell for its blitz cost, it gains haste, and when this creature dies, draw a card. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So what this really says is that you have a 4 mana 4/4 with haste, and when it dies at the end of turn, because it will die, you gain a tapped 2/2 black rogue creature token for your efforts. The Blitz is pretty good, I think. It basically becomes a bit of a burn spell and uncontrolled burn spell in black. But the Blitz effect, I think I like it. I think I like it a lot, actually. Because that's a hell of a thing to toss out a person, right? Take 4 damage and get 2/2 at the end of it. That might be worth. I play it. Limited, of course. It's not constructed playable. But as a, like, 4 damage in limited is a whole lot to deal with. Graveyard Shift, 5 mana sorcery. This spell has flash as long as there are 5 or more mana values among cards in your graveyard. This is why you want to have some self-mill as well, or ways to to toss cards from your library directly to the graveyard. Return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. That's interesting. Like, there are a lot of 5 mana resurrection effects in black. That's not the interesting part. The interesting part is being able to do it at instant speed. So you can respond to the state of the board or whatever your opponent's done on their turn by resurrecting the right creature at the right time, presumably. As long as, of course, you stuff your graveyard with a whole bunch of different mana values. That's good, actually. That might even be good enough to build a standard deck around, like a bit of a toolbox deck, where you deliberately toss a whole bunch of random ass jank of different mana values into your graveyard, and whenever the opponent does something, you bring out a creature that does the exact or near exact counter you need to whatever they're doing. There is some flexibility to that sort of play. I would have to think more about how that overall strategy would work. But the fact that you can do it at instant speed is hella good. It's actually really, really playable. It's still playable limited too, because hey, you know what's good after dropping one bomb and having it die? Having that bomb come back and wreck your opponent's day. Oh, you thought you get rid of the biggest threat in the game? I got bad news. Grisly Sigil is a 1 mana sorcery with casualty 1. Choose target creature or planeswalker. If it was dealt non-combat damage this turn, Grisly Sigil deals 3 damage to it and you gain 3 life. Otherwise, Grisly Sigil deals 1 damage to it and you gain 1 life. This is better than it looks. The fact that it specifies non-combat damage seems like a drawback at first, but then you casualty 1 and it triggers itself for 4 damage to target creature or planeswalker. So as long as you have anything to sacrifice to Grisly Sigil, it's basically a 1 mana 4 damage sorcery to get rid of any planeswalkers or major threats on the field. That's absolutely worth it. I wish it was instant, but it would be a little busted if it was instant. Like, if it was instant speed, you would have 4 copies of it in pretty much every deck for every occasion. It would be that good. As a sorcery, you have to be a little more deliberate with how you're playing it. You have to telegraph your punch, basically, which means the opponent has a chance to respond. But honestly, 4 damage to blow up their planeswalker on your turn, that's still good. That's still good. Illicit Shipment is a 5 mana sorcery with casualty 3. Search your library for a card, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Okay, it's a generic tutor. It's a generic tutor that possibly gets you 2 cards. So if you're playing some kind of mana acceleration to get this out a little early, you basically have the opportunity to get 2 combo pieces out for a price of 1 card, which by itself is not too bad. It's just not very exciting. It's definitely more of a constructed play than anything else, with the notable disadvantage of trying to get it to trigger twice. Like trying to pay for the casualty part of the cost. It's not great. It's not great. I would rather have strict card draw and just have enough pieces for the combo that I can get out mathematically consistently, rather than having to play cards like this and try to get the casualty cost go through. Like, casualty 3 is pretty strict. It's not as if you sacrifice multiple creatures with power 3 or greater, right? You have to sacrifice a creature with power 3 or greater, and when you do, then you copy the spell. How many creatures are you running in a combo deck that would have 3 power or more to sacrifice to this, that you would be happy to sacrifice to this? Casualty 1 fits just right in because it interacts with pretty much every single token out in the game. Everything that costs 0 mana just like generates itself out on a turn-by-turn basis. Anything with Casualty 1, you have to think twice about whether or not it's actually secretly overpowered. Casualty 3, a little too much. Little too much. Incriminate. 2 mana sorcery, choose 2 target creatures controlled by the same player. That player sacrifices one of them. In a lot of situations, this is a whiff. Like, I cannot count the number of times where the board state is basically they have 1 threat and a 1/1 we need to like a 1/1 token creature that they can that's just there to chump block with next turn, right? And if that is the case, this card is useless. I'm trying to think if this is constructed playable or not, because you can sculpt the situation in your favor, where they're having to choose basically a Solomon's Judgment situation between 2 equally important targets for their overall strategy. But the fact is, it's almost always a bad idea to give your opponent the choice in any of those situations, right? Because you don't fully, like, even if you understand, even if you've memorized the competitive meta fully, you're still not fully sure of the ratio of certain cards in their deck. You're still not fully sure of what cards there are in their hand, and therefore your understanding of what is the actual bigger threat on a turn-by-turn basis is always going to be a little nebulous. And giving the opponent the choice to just sacrifice, like, toss away something that they already have in their hand, I'd rather just have a straight up kill spell, like some way to force it to sacrifice on creature by creature basis. That's great. But there are better cards, I think. I would like, even though you do get to choose 2 of their most powerful creatures on the board and force them to get rid of 1, and that does get around a lot of ways to protect that creature, like shield counters, like defensive boosters, stuff like that, or they're just too big to get rid of with the -X effects. Then sure, this is a way to get around that restriction. But you would need a lot of these running simultaneously. Like, they're forced to sacrifice pretty much every single turn before cards like this really shine. Now, if there is a setup where there's an enchantment or something, or a creature or something that actually does trigger a constant state of sacrifice X to pay for the board state, then you might want to sneak this in to just like force the issue a little more. These things are definitely more powerful when multiplied with each other than they are alone. Join the Maestros, Casualty 2, create a 4/3 Black Ogre Warrior creature token for 5 mana. So spending 5 to get effectively 8/6 amount of board presence in return for Casualty 2. Not the worst, not constructed playable by any means. It would be a very, very late pick in a round. Basically, this would be like turns 6, 7, or 8 when there's nothing else really in the pile in front of you, but you're already deep in black and you can figure out a way to pay for the Casualty 2 pretty easily. Then, you know what, it's not bad. It's always nice to have 2 4/3s come out, just wrecking face. And that curve especially. It's not the most powerful card, especially since they only have toughness 3 each. Easy way to chump block around them, or just blow them up through whatever means. But it is a very powerful board state, and if they don't have any answers for it, they will be in trouble. So I would consider this just a little short of being a limited bomb, but obviously it's not constructed playable. Like, this kind of generic effect when it's just vanilla creatures coming out, that's not interesting at all. This, however, is interesting. Maestro's Initiate, a 3/1 for 3. So coming out turn 3, kind of janky. But when it dies, things get very interesting. For 5 mana, exile Maestro's Initiate from your graveyard, draw 2 cards, then discard a card. So you're paying upfront for a generic 3/1 vanilla creature, But when it dies, your later turns, especially on your opponent's turn a little better because you get some really powerful card draw for after it's being used up. Limited playable. I will even pull multiples of these just to have the card draw engine going for me. It's not too exciting by itself, but in that kind of format where you're limited and you're really hungry for card advantages to card advantage mechanics, this is pretty solid. I would absolutely play this. Midnight Assassin for the same cost, but you only get a 1/2 body, but you get flying and death touch, which makes this a really good defensive option. You're not doing a whole lot of attacking with this, but you are guaranteed to be able to stop anything without indestructibility or shield counters with a touch. Now, in a format with shield counters, like we're getting with New Capenna, this is less powerful than what otherwise would be, because shield counters prevents death touch from working. But if they don't have a shield, their biggest creatures are still really screwed. So, not bad for like basically the threat of a kill spell. Or you can just straight up grab a kill spell. If you're playing black, you're playing murder. Destroy target creature for instant speed, 3 mana. Don't think twice about it. Just grab it. Just deal with it because there's nothing better in terms of like targeted kills. And the fact that it's common too is also really helpful. Alright. Nightclubber, 3 mana for 2/2 with a blitz effect that makes it a little easier to splash. When Nightclubber enters the battlefield, creatures your opponent control get -1/-1 until end of turn. This is a very aggressive card, especially with its blitz cost. Like I can see this running in a green, red, black blitz deck, specifically as a way to make trades a little more favorable for you. And honestly, the aesthetic is great. It's literally a Nightclubber. It's a bouncer with a club that works at a nightclub. That's good shit. But yeah, it's not exciting. It's more than playable and limited. It's nothing exciting for constructed. In order for this to truly shine, you would have to be in a meta where there are basically citizens coming out of the woodworks in every single pipe and every single nook and cranny. So -1/-1 would be very effective in such an environment. But by itself, it's basically just an additional aggro card you play for the blitz cost. Yep, club time. Rafine's Silencer, 3 mana for 1/1, which is already the suspect. When Rafine's Silencer enters the battlefield, it connives, so it becomes possibly a 2/2. When Rafine's Silencer dies, target creature your opponent controls gets -X/-X until end of turn, where X is Rafine's Silencer's power. I would rather have Death Touch. Now, there are some options on the board for for creatures to connive multiple times, potentially becoming explosively large. But in a vacuum, it doesn't necessarily happen with Rafine's Silencer. You might as well just drag something with Death Touch to it to guarantee the kill. But it does have notable effects around shield. It gets around shield. It guarantees that if they have a shield token and they have only 2 toughness or less, or whatever amount of toughness less than her power, this is a very good way to punish them for running that mechanic. But yeah, it's really situational. It's also really limited only. I'd be happy enough to see it limited just because there are a lot of shields to deal with. But it's nothing exciting. Revel Ruiner is a little more interesting because it's Menace and it becomes a 4/2 with Connive. And by itself, 4 for 4/2 is nothing, but Menace forces him to block it with at least 2 creatures, potentially allowing some really good trades. Or even just like letting that 4 damage through. That happens a lot too. It's not bad. It's playable limited. If you're playing black, there's no reason not to splash this. It's a fairly chunky body with a good evasion mechanic that forces favorable trades. You're happy enough. You're happy enough to see it. Rogues Gallery. For each color, return up to one target creature of that color from your graveyard to your hand. In a lot of decks, this is 3 cards for 3 mana. Especially in New Capenna, where you tend to want to run 3 color factions. Because that's how the game is designed, to work advantageously around the 3 color slices. So, honestly, not bad. Depending on the deck, this might even be all the way down to modern playable. Like, this can be busted. This can be potentially pretty busted. I would need to actually play the format more to understand it, to get a good grasp of how effective that would be. But my gut instinct is that you're going to be drafting 3 color most of the time anyhow, making Rogue's Gallery potentially 1 card for 3 cards, which is really advantageous for you. Sanguine Spy is 2/3 minutes, lifelink for 3. Sacrifice another creature, look at a top card of your library. You may put that card into your graveyard. At the beginning of your end step, if there are 5 or more mana values among cards in your graveyard, you may pay 2 life. If you do, draw a card. Honestly, not bad. It's 2/3 with minutes and lifelink, so already it's generating some life for you while like generating, while also having like a form of evasion to get the hits in. But the fact that it stuffs your graveyard, it gets you cards late to the game, that's good. That's honestly pretty damn nice. There's some form of black centric control that's taking advantage of this. Shadow of Mortality, which is a very interesting card. That's you're not reading this wrong? That's 13 black, so 15 mana total to play for a 7/7. If your life total is less than your starting life total, this spell costs X less to cast, where X is the difference. If you somehow lose 13 life, this becomes a 7/7 for 2 mana. That's interesting. It's probably more commander playable than anything else. Specifically commander constructed, where there are some commanders that let you start off with lower health than the maximum 40 given to commander players. Not maximum 40, but the default 40 given to commander players. And if so, you get a really beefy character for a really low cost. But in both limited and constructed, I wouldn't call this a particularly good card in that vacuum. 7 life left is just a little dangerous. It's just a little dangerous. In limited, there are a lot of situations where they can basically one-hit you if you're down to 7 life. And waiting that long to cast a generic 7/7 vanilla means that it's going to just get chump blocked. At best, this is a defensive card that lets you trade with something bigger. But if you're already down that late into the game where you can conceivably cast this for only 2, you want something with actual impact when it lands or when it's destroyed. Or just something with a lot of synergy. This is an avatar. It doesn't synergize with anything. There's no avatar tribe, at least not yet. Shadow of Mortality, oh, that's the same thing. Shakedown Heavy, 3 mana for a 6/4 with menace, holy shit. Whenever Shakedown Heavy attacks, the defending player may have you draw a card. If they do, untap Shakedown Heavy and remove it from combat. So this is 3 mana to guarantee that the opponent is going to give you a card pretty much every turn, and or spend a lot of expensive resources to block this thing and kill it. Granted, again, you really don't want to give your opponent the choice in this situation, but given its absurd cost to power ratio without the interaction effect, that's really good. That's actually playable. I'm not unhappy to just drop this down and say, you're giving me cards for next few turns. Tavern Swindler is actually a reprint from Return to Ravnica. Pay 3 life, flip a card, flip a coin. If you win the flip, you gain 6 life. Are you feeling lucky, punk? I mean, it's not a great card by itself. It's just a 2/2 bear. It's 2 power, 2 toughness for 2 mana. The flip effect is what's interesting because gaining 3 life a turn is not the worst, but you can just as easily like chip away at your own life and just die. If you have Croc's Thumb, for instance, to take advantage of this, or anything that triggers off of a flip coin, this is a really cheap way to keep a coin flips going. But is it playable in anything else other than that? Not really. Don't kid yourself. Don't take the risk. Tenacious Underdog. 2 mana for a 3/2. Blitz 4 actually, and you pay 2 life. But you may cast Tenacious Underdog from your graveyard using its Blitz ability, which means that every turn, once you get 4 mana, you're guaranteed to deal at least 3 damage to the opponent's board state. Whether or not that's worth it, I think there are better forms of graveyard recursion, and having to pay 2 life on top of that is really expensive. There has to be better things you can do. Vampire Scrivener, 5 mana for 2/2. Flying whenever you gain life during your turn, put a +1/+1 counter. Whenever you lose life during your turn, put a +1/+1 counter on them as well. So either way, it's getting big, getting fast, really fast, and it has flying as evasion, which means it's playable. It's limited playable, definitely. If you already know that you're deep in black, there are cards that costs you life, and there are some cards that gain you life. Then this quickly scales out of hand. Because you can expect so much fewer kill spells in limited, and also kill spells of very, very different qualities from turn to turn. This has the potential to stay on the field for a long time and get bigger and bigger. Obviously, there's no reason to play this construct because it dies to everything that it dies in constructed formats very easily. But I'm not unhappy to see this as in a black deck draft. Whack! 4 mana for sorcery. This spell costs 3 less to cast if it targets a white creature. Target creature gets -4/-4 until end of turn, so basically becomes a 2 mana sorcery for -4/-4 if you're playing against a white player. So that might be something you want to keep in the sideboard for your limited deck, just to have against people that are running white decks. It actually has some application. The problem is it's a sorcery. That's no good. That's no good at all. You actually might still want to see this run as sideboard material and constructed if there happens to be a lot of angels in the field, because there are a lot of ways now to give angels like temporary indestructibility or shield tokens to let them tank damage, and this gets around both of them. So I'm not going to say that you won't be seeing this in the meta. I'm just going to say you're not seeing this as main deck fodder, unless the situation with white creatures gets completely untenable otherwise. It's playable, it's just not exciting. So that's all black. There's been a lot of disappointments in black overall. I feel like it's not, by itself, it's not the best color that we've seen so far. It has a few interesting effects, especially with knife, but it needs a lot of synergies to really like give it a go. And some of those synergies are completely out of control too. Let's see if red's any better. Antagonize. Target creature gets +4/+3 until end of turn for a 2 mana instant. That's good. That's a lot of damage. Holy shit. The little guy had guts at least. You can see it You can see him right there between those cobbles. Yeesh, that guy got punched out. But seriously, holy shit, that's 4 damage for 2 mana. That's good. If there is a red aggro deck out there, I might actually want to play this because that's a lot of power. Arcane Bombardment is a lot less straightforward. It's a 6 mana enchantment. Whenever you cast your first instant or sorcery spell each turn, exile an instant or sorcery spell at random from your graveyard. Then copy each card exiled with Arcane Bombardment. You may cast any number of the copies without paying their mana cost. Yeah, blue is honestly really powerful right now. I really like cards in blue. Arcane Bombardment is interesting. It comes out late enough for a red deck that you can expect there to be a lot of instant and sorcery spells in there. and it gets better and better over time because it copies each card exiled with Arcane Bombardment. Not that turn, but just overall. Every single card that's ever been exiled by this card gets copied every single time you cast the card. Well, not every single time. Every single time you cast a card for the first, cast your first instant or sorcery card that turn. And it can be your opponent's turn too. There are some really insanely powerful spells and standard that this is playable with. I'm thinking of the sorceries that can be cast aside for 2 mana to create a treasure token. If you then use the treasure token to accelerate your way into Arcane Bombardment, then play any spell at all and exile something like, let me show you. What's it called? Skyfall. Here we are. So the situation, no, that's not it. Oh, it's instant? Oh, it might be instant actually. Let me see. Partial matches. Yeah, here you are. I'm thinking of Magma Opus, where it deals 4 damage divided as you choose among any number of targets, tap 2 target permanents, and create a 4/4 blue and red elemental creature token and draw 2 cards. Or you just pay 2 mana to discard it and create a treasure token, right? Or you play Creative Outburst, which is 5 damage to any target. Look at top 5 cards of the library, put 1 thing in your hand and the rest in the bottom of your library in a random order. And then discard Creative Outburst, create a treasure token. Combine this with Arcane Bombardment. We are deliberately tossing them into the graveyard in order to get as many treasure tokens as possible, to get this out as early as possible, to deliberately have them exiled through Arcane Bombardment as you play counter spells on your opponent's turn, burn spells on your turn, and then just have this randomly toss out Creative Outbursts. Holy shit, that actually might be a deck. I may actually have to try that. Obviously not limited playable. You'll be very disappointed. You'll be very disappointed to play this unlimited. But in constructed, I might know how to break this. It has the potential to break. Yeah, this is exciting. This I think I can manage. It basically becomes a pseudo combo, where as long as you can protect the enchantment, which is it's a bit of an ask. If you can protect the enchantment becomes a hell of a powerful effect. Big scorer, 4 mana instant. As additional cost to cast a spell, discard a card. Draw 2 cards to create 2 treasure tokens. This is basically part of the 4 mana instant speed draw spell cycle that we already saw in blue and black. It's not too bad. Discard a land card to get 2 cards and create 2 treasure tokens on your opponent's turn. That's honestly pretty solid. The 4 mana is still expensive, but I can still see this being played in slower formats. It's really good and limited because it just lets you play whatever you want the next turn, and gives you whatever you want. Gives you cards to play next turn as well. Honestly, pretty solid. I would need to experiment more to see if this is actually limited, constructed playable. But definitely, I'm not too unhappy to have this in a red deck and limited. Now it's a lower priority than kill spells, than good creatures, than bombs and all that. But if it's a choice between like an unimportant, like low value creature and big score, grab the big score. Call in a professional, 3 mana, players can't gain life this turn, which is honestly getting more and more important. Damage can be prevented this turn, also very good. It means that it gets through shields. Calling a professional deals 3 damage to any target. It's a 3 mana instant as well. Shield counters don't prevent this damage as they're removed. Until this day, Birdie really reminds me of what's it called? Proto Men, the dudes that do rock songs about the Mega Man franchise. Until the City Burning sounds a lot like their Volume 2 songs. I really enjoy that. Call It Professional is good. It's a bit of a sideboard card because there are cheaper ways to deal damage, but that's only maybe. The fact is it's instant speed. It guarantees the damage. It can't be like the only thing that is not safe from is being countered. That's it. But this is otherwise a very useful, very flexible card that happens to cripple a number of interesting strategies. So yeah, I played this, absolutely. I've even played this in Red Deck just in general. Like, imagine Calling Professional getting absorbed by a King Bombardment. It just coming out every single time you toss out a spell. 3 damage every single you turn a counter spell into 3 damage, easy. What the hell? That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. Daring Escape. Target creature gets +1/+0 against first strike until end of turn. Strike for 1. It's very high value, but it's not high value enough to make it too constructed. It's basically a very good combat trick for limited. Like, you win fights out of nowhere with shit like this. That's honestly very, very good. Devilish Valet, 3 mana for Trample Haste 1/3. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your turn, double Devilish Valet's power until end of turn. Oh, let me see. 1 becomes 2, becomes 4, becomes 8, becomes 16. So if you can drop 4 creatures down 1 turn, that's a 16/3. If you drop 3 creatures down 1 turn, which is very easy with token generators, it's an 8/3 with trample on turn 3 or later. Now, generally, you're only going to get 1 or 2 creatures out from a token generator at once. So, talking either 2 damage or 4 damage, which honestly isn't very exciting. But if you have an enchantment that creates tokens, and especially in plural, Devilish Valet gets really interesting. I want to see if there is a mono red or red-white tokens deck that can take advantage of that. And it's still not bad limited either, because it's still a really good body with 2 relevant abilities for 3 mana. That's good. It's playable. You absolutely play it. It's not going to break the game in limited. Constructed, there is a higher opportunity for constructed decks to take a full advantage of a Devilish Valet's triggered ability. But it's still not a bad card, even if it's just a 1/3 with haste. Like, that's perfectly acceptable. That is the full art version. I'm really liking these borderless these extended art card styles. They just look a lot more modern. Exhibition Magician, 3 mana for 2/1. When Exhibition Magician enters the battlefield, choose 1, create a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token, or create a treasure token. So if you drop this when Devilish Valet is out, Devilish Valet becomes a 4/3 with haste and trample. Not too bad. This by itself is also not too bad because it gives you 2 bodies for a price of 1 cost, or 1 body and a treasure token. So you accelerate your overall mana stage while also having a body to block with. That's playable. That's limited playable. There's not too many. There's not a lot of space for cards like this in constructed that don't have meaningful impact on the board or like truly augment whatever comes next after it. But it's a solid 3 mana chump blocker. You'd still draft this and not be too unhappy about it. Business is open to you. Alright. Glittering Stockpile is a 3 mana artifact treasure. You can either add a red mana to your pool, knows that it's not a creature, so you can do this right away, and put a stash counter on Glittering Stockpile. Or if you sacrifice Glittering Stockpile, add X mana of any one color, where X is the number of stash counters on Glittering Stockpile. So this is a 3 mana accelerant, which is a little expensive. But the more you use it, the better it is. That's the important part here. The more you use it, the better it is. That is honestly the best example of something like this I've seen. Because usually, all you're getting is a 3 mana generator, which is really poor value overall. But if your plan is to play some kind of control game with red, you want a lot of mana when you go off. This helps you get your 6 mana enchantments out. This helps you get Creative Outburst and Magma Opus out. This shit is good shit. This is what I would want to see in a late game control strategy, right? Just like play my regular shit and be rewarded for playing my regular shit, and then use that reward to win the game, or to put myself into a state where not winning the game is damn near unimaginable. That's amazing. I love that. It's a great thing. But it's not even my favorite card. It's not even my favorite red treasure. My favorite red treasure, the single most broken card in this set may actually be this next common card. This is the Gold Hound. It's a 1/1 first strike and menace, and you can sacrifice it to add 1 mana of any color. I'm going to show you why this is so broken. Now, obviously, by itself is already a great 1-drop, and the beefier it gets, the more important that first strike ability gets. And if it suddenly becomes less, if it's certainly not in the market for a 1/1 for any reason, you can sacrifice it to generate mana, right? Now that already is amazing. That already is perfect. This is a good boy, but it becomes even better. Come on, load it. There we go. You drop Gold Hound on turn 1. You drop Eater of Virtue on turn 2. Gold Hound becomes a 3/1 first strike menace. And at any time you drop a bigger, more relevant creature, you sacrifice Gold Hound to transfer Eater of Virtue with a first strike and menace token onto your next creature, which then becomes also +2/+0, while also retaining the so-called virtue. You gain first strike and menace onto your next creature, which is going to be bigger. It's going to be a lot bigger than a 1/1, and it's going to be even more nasty to trade against. Like, I am actually really tempted to figure out a possibly red-white artifact and creature synergy, guaranteeing the use of guaranteed the usage of 4 Gold Hounds and 4 Eater Virtues to get as close to guaranteed as possible to that turn 1 setup, to do just go completely nuts on them from turn 1 onward. Not turn 1, turn 2 onward. Like, that is legitimately a scary ass thing. It might just even be mono red. Because if it has menace and it has first strike, there's not a lot of situations where you need any further evasion. Just trading against something that scary, like, you're probably going to lose 2 creatures for 1 on a trade, and when it dies, it transferred its virtue over to the next creature you equip for a single mana onto the next creature. Like, this had the potential to be a busty equipment when it first came out, but it was a little janky to work with. But when you have something like this to guarantee that no matter what, you have some of the best possible abilities to apply to your next, to your next attacker, I see no reason not to run that sort of insanely aggressive rushdown deck. Like, this is by far my favorite card of New Capenna so far. And there are 1 or 2 cards that have a lot of synergistic potential, but the sheer explosiveness of a Gold Hound into Eater of Virtue play is something that I'm actually very eager to make a deck as soon as possible to try out. I think that there might even be a really strong Samurai deck out of this. Next is Horde Hauler, which is a lot less interesting. It's 4 mana for 5/5 trample vehicle, so you need to crew it with a minimum of 3 power. Whenever Horde Hauler deals combat damage to a player, create a treasure token for each artifact they control. I don't know. If you see a Horde Hauler coming through, and with a crew power of 3 just to access it, it's a little much. It's a little much. It's not so interesting. I don't like Horde Hauler. I feel like there are a lot, like, it has a lot of power. Trample helps you get it through, but it's so situational that I'm not sure how often you'll actually be able to benefit from its primary ability. Plus, crew 3 is really high. There might be a red, white, blue deck that can take advantage of this, using Mobilizer Mech to turn Horde Hauler into an artifact creature on its own without having to crew it. And if that is the case, then there is something to do. At minimum, it's 5/5 that tramples through. But I would much rather have the treasure token generator on a much cheaper and much less powerful creature that aim to see this relevant ability on the rather generic trample body. Involuntary Employment, which is hilarious. 4 mana sorcery, gains control target creature until end of turn. Untap that creature. It gains haste until end of turn and create a treasure token. So this is another treason card. Red has effects like this all the time, all the damn time. This is probably the nicest one to use, given that it gives you a treasure token to use on turn afterwards. The best possible play, of course, is to set this up with a way to sacrifice a creature for additional value. But at 4 mana, treason abilities usually come in 3 mana or less for a good damn reason, because 4 mana to grab a creature for 1 turn is a little expensive. It becomes a lot harder at 4 mana to combo with this, where they sacrifice a creature for X effect. Jackhammer is 2 mana for +2/+0 with equip 2 cost. So 4 mana to give something +2/+0. That's not interesting at all. This is on the far end, the lower end of playable. Like, there are times where you want to have artifacts around just to give your creatures a little something extra, but you're not excited to play Jackhammer. It's a very last pick. If it's like the last 2 or 3 cards in the draft, and you happen to see this in your on color, you pick it up, and that's about it. Jax is the Troublemaker. 3 mana for 2/3. Red, discard a card. Create a token that's a copy of another target creature you control. It gains haste, and when this creature dies, draw a card. So you give it Blitz. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. Activate only as a sorcery. Or it's a Blitz by itself. It comes out with haste, and when it dies, you draw a card. Now, because it's a 2 mana Blitz, you can either just toss it out as basically a 2 mana 2 damage for anything. But by far the most relevant ability is to use this at 3 mana. You blitz it for 2, and then because it has haste, you can use the ability to discard a card and create a token of something a lot more powerful on the board. This basically becomes like a pseudo fling, which is a card. It's a very old card in Magic that basically acts as a way to discard a card to deal direct damage. If you have a lot of really beefy creatures that can copy with this technique, then sure, it's okay. But frankly, I think that Kiki-Jiki and the champion in Neon Dynasty does this job for. You can probably run both. Jax's and Kiki-Jiki, and you just copy really big, nasty things that have entered the battlefield effects all day. No, it doesn't come into the battlefield. It just copies and creates a token. No, just things with Death Touch or things with Double Strike or First Strike. It just pitch them into the enemy field states constantly. That's a good way to get things through. It's not the most interesting, but I'm sure there are ways to take advantage of this and set you up for a really really damaging plays. It's just that it's basically becomes a combo deck at that point, which isn't Red's forte. I feel like there are so many situationals that getting this to work optimally is asking for a bit much. I'd still try to play this in limited though. 2-3 body for 4 is still playable, with especially with the blitz effect, and being able to copy creatures in a limited format is a good way to apply pressure. And she gets multiple versions. This is basically Vi from League of Legends, by the way. Light them up. 2 mana sorcery, casualty 2. Light them up deals 2 damage to target creature or planeswalker. If you happen to sacrifice a creature to it, it deals 4 damage to target creature or planeswalker, with your choice as to how to split it up. Now, the fact that you can split up that 4 damage, possibly targeting 2 targets at once, makes Light Them Up a lot more interesting than otherwise would be, especially since the casualty 2 cost is otherwise a little expensive. But I think that expense might be worth it. I think it's not casualty 1, because honestly, being able to sacrifice a single token, a single 1/1 token, to blow up 2 different targets is definitely impressive. The level of flexibility that this card has is a little high. It's still really deck dependent. I'm not sure I would be happy to see this in a constructed deck, for instance. I feel like there are better ways to get that 4 damage out in constructed. But in limited, it will clear out 2 creatures pretty advantageously for you. Mayhem Patrol, 1/2 with Menace. Whenever Mayhem Patrol attacks, target creature gets +1/+1 until +1/+0 until end of turn, with a Blitz 2 effect. So if you already have a ton of creatures out, you send this out, you guarantee at least 2 damage with the Blitz. That's not exciting. It's not great. It's only 2 toughness 2. I feel like there are better cards for red at even 2 mana. The Menace itself is okay, but you definitely want to have stacking effects to really get some juice out of this. Nah, I'm not too excited by this. Plasma Jockey. 4 mana, 3/1, Blitz 3. Whenever Plasma Jockey attacks, target creature your opponent controls can't block this turn. And because you can use it for Blitz, you Blitz 3 to basically prevent a block and get 3 damage through. And get 3 additional damage through. Now, it can only stop 1 creature, obviously, so if they have multiple creatures on the field, this still dies. But I'm not too unhappy to see this as a Blitz card, because after all, it does replace itself when it dies. Yeah, this is a tempo card. This is a 3 mana tempo card. You almost never play for the full cost. But as a way to squeeze damage through and force them to play defensively, yeah, not too unhappy. Professional Facebreaker for 3 mana, 2/3 Menace. Whenever 1 or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, create a treasure token, sacrifice a treasure token, exile the top card of the library. You may play that card this turn. If I am playing mono red aggro, this is a must-have. Like, even without haste as a relevant ability, you put this down on turn 3, you probably have creatures out on turns 1 and 2 that are already getting damage through. You swing with them, they deal combat damage to the enemy player, and suddenly you have mana to drop a dragon next turn. Holy shit. Even if you don't have like a 5 mana creature out the next turn to take full advantage of your land drops, the fact that you can sacrifice treasures to basically give yourself cards on any turn to play, like just like dig through your deck using treasures to pay for the additional cards to use, that is insanely good. Yeah, Professional Facebreaker is absolutely 100% playable. I'm sure I can figure out a way to make this really busted. I'm excited to see this card in the format. I like that red has a lot of boxing themes going on. It definitely fits. Pugnacious Pugilist. 5 mana for 4/4. Whenever Pugnacious Pugilist attacks, create a tapped and attacking 1/1 red devil creature token with when this creature dies, it deals 1 damage to any target. So you still get 5 damage on the turn it comes out, potentially 6 damage if the devil dies. The interesting part here is the blitz for 4, because the devil is not obligated to be sacrificed when the pugilist is. So you get 5 damage through, and a card for 4 mana. That might be worth playing. Huh. It's definitely good limited. It might actually still be playable in like a red-green blitz deck. Because it sets you up pretty damn well with that potential up to 6 damage. Kind of scary, honestly. Pirate Sledge Arsonist. 3 mana for 2/2. 1 mana tap. Pirate Sledge Arsonist deals X damage to any target, where X is the number of permanents you've sacrificed this turn. That's not playable. I won't say it's not playable. I'll say that casualty is in personal sacrifice based gameplay is hard to really squeeze any value out of this. It would be better if this has haste. But because it doesn't, and because you can target this in response to them sacrificing anything, I feel like this is relatively low value overall, and not even all that playable and limited either. There are much better things to do at 3 mana. Ready to Rumble is a 5 mana sorcery. Choose 1. Ready to Rumble deals 5 damage to target creature or planeswalker or destroy target artifact. This sucks. This fucking sucks. There are better ways to get 5 damage out for less than 5 mana. And you do not want to be spending 5 mana to destroy target artifact. Good god. If it says choose 1 or both, that would be one thing. That kind of level of flexibility is nice. If you can toss in the destroy target artifact as like a bonus action, but you can't with this. It just sucks. Don't play this. There are much better ways to spend your mana. Oh, this is interesting. Riveteer's Initiate for 2 mana 2/2, basically a bear. Legal in Magic. Anything that comes out as a 2 mana for 2/2 tends to be a bear. But add 2 more mana when it attacks, and it gains Death Touch until end of turn, which makes this really interesting. It's not exactly the most interesting creature in a constructed format, because a 2/2 with Death Touch is really nothing. But in a limited format, Death Touch is really powerful. And to gain this basically on demand whenever you want it, as long as you have 2 mana open, one of them being black or green, that's really freaking scary, actually. It trades favorably with pretty much anything that it runs across, unless it has shield. Yeah, if it has a shield, no good. Riveteer's Requisitioner it's a 2 mana for 3/1, which is already really good. And when it dies, it creates a treasure token, and you can guarantee that treasure token by blitzing for 3. This is one of those rare cases where the blitz is more expensive than the default card, because the default card is already really good. If you can get it out for any cheaper, it'll actually be broken. This is a very good 2-drop. It'll trade favorably with anything in the early game with 3 attack, and then when it dies, it makes your more powerful stuff even easier to get out. So yeah, grab this if you're playing red, obviously. Rob the Archives for 2 mana, Casualty 1, which is already interesting. Exile the top 2 cards of library. You may play those cards this turn. Wow. That's good, actually. That's really good. What it actually reads is that in late game, as long as you have a token to sacrifice, you pay 2 mana, you look at the top 4 cards of the library, and you can play that however many of them as you want, and then exile the rest. That's really, really solid. That is if you're seeing this on turns 5 and 6 and you're already burning through your hand, you're almost out of gas, dropping this can potentially swing the game in your favor. Maybe even win it outright. That's how good it is. This is actually really solid. It's solid to the point where if there is a mono red or red based aggro deck out there, you're going to see this played. You will not, however, see this play with the enchantment, because obviously one needs to go to graveyard instead. But if that is not a problem, if you're not playing Graveyard Recursion, this is inherently really powerful for only 2 mana. Sizzling Soloist, 3/2/4/4. Alliance, whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, target creature and opponent control can block the turn. If this is the second time this ability has resolved this turn, that creature attacks during its controller's next combat phase if able. So it taunts them, it prevents them from blocking, it drives somebody mad. As long as you can get multiple creatures out on the board when that happens. The setup for this is pretty easy, honestly. The problem is that it's a 4 mana card for this effect. Like, I would rather see this as a 3 mana 2/1 than I am to see as a 4 mana 3/2, simply because, like, either you want this on the curve as soon as possible to start, like, churning out that effect and forcing them to make really unfortunate trades, or you want to be able to drop this card followed by another card in mid game to trigger that effect, right? To get it right away. You can't do that at 4 mana. It's really, really hard to. You're locked out of any interesting combat tricks with this in the early game and in the mid game where it's most relevant. So no, I'm not too excited to see this. If I already have a lot of token generators, I might think about picking up one of these, but I'm not happy to. Like, if I'm that desperate for creatures, I should draft better, honestly. Sticky Fingers. 1 mana enchant creature, which is already really good. 1 mana enchantments means that you're not sacrificing too much. Enchanted creature has Menace, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, create a treasure token, which is already really good. But then the last line, when enchanted creature dies, draw a card? Holy shit. You absolutely play this. It's basically mana acceleration as long as the creature dies. But even if it doesn't, no, it's just plain old mana acceleration, period. Like, giving any creature Menace on turn 2 is already really freaking good. And like, the biggest problem with aura enchantments generally is that if you slap down aura and they kill the creature, you lose 2 cards for the price of 1, right? That's never a good thing. It might actually be a JoJo reference, actually. This kind of looks like a JoJo jacket. But no, Sticky Fingers is less of a JoJo reference and more of a pickpocket reference, right? Like, you're literally pickpocketing them. And even if you die, you still gain something out of it, right? So, yeah, this is a really good enchantment. Holy shit. I would not be unhappy to play multiples of this in Limited. And even in Constructed, I think this might actually be playable with aggro decks that really want you to just get in there early on. That's really solid. Now, I realize that there is a Sticky Fingers in JoJo, of course, but that's JoJo referencing something else rather than this being a JoJo reference on zone. Strangle. Deal 3 target creature or planeswalker for only 1 mana as a sorcery. Like I said, there are many better ways to get 3 damage out or more. Strangle being one of them. I wish it was an instant with even any drawback whatsoever. As a sorcery, as a way to only kill creature planeswalker is kind of boring. But you pick this up as many as possible if you're playing red. Because 3 damage is 3 damage. Just plain and simple. Structural Assault for 5 mana is a sorcery. Destroy all artifacts, then Structural Assault deals damage to each creature equal to the number of artifacts that were put into the graveyard from the battlefield this turn. I feel like this is not a very good card unless it's a single sideboard card against a meta with a lot of artifacts. Like, imagine we're in the height of Mirrodin when you're facing nothing but artifacts. Even the land are artifacts, all the creature are artifacts, all the artifacts of course are artifacts, and some of the artifacts are indestructible, but this at least neutralizes that kind of artifact-centric strategy and basically acts as a wrath at the same time. So, too situational. I can only think of very narrow situations where you even want this in the sideboard, and so in the sideboard it stays. Torch Breath, X and 1. This spell costs 2 less to cast if it targets a blue spell. This spell can't be countered. Torch Breath deals X damage to target creature or planeswalker. This is an X's sideboard card. In fact, it's an excellent card in general. even if it's not talking a blue permanent, the fact that it's basically a fireball, well, not a fireball, but some kind of flame breathing effect. I forgot which card actually does this specifically. But no, you play this. If you're playing red, you play this. Period. Blue permanent or not. The fact that it can't be countered is already very good. And the fact that you can choose how much mana goes into the damage, or to choose how much damage goes into this, makes it flexible enough. It's flexible enough. The most important thing, obviously, is that you do this at instant speed. But I'm not too unhappy to see this in my deck in either format. Unlucky Witness. When Unlucky Witness dies, exile the top 2 cards of your library until your next end step. You may play one of those cards. Obviously, this is best in a casualty deck where you're wanting to sacrifice the Witness in order to gain some card advantage or some additional advantage along the way. It's playable. In fact, it's playable just universally. It's not too exciting if you're going to play this outside of limited, but there are deck archetypes and deck mechanics that you want to focus on where this may be potentially very powerful. But yeah, again, it's really depending on other cards to really have some juice. Here is the Phyrexian for the set, because they are obviously building up to a huge confrontation with the Phyrexian Praetors. Urabrask, Heretic Praetor, 5 mana for 4/4, haste. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of the library. You may play it this turn. At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, the next time they would draw a card this turn, instead they exile the top card of the library. They may play it this turn. I don't like it. It's weak, it's easy to kill, and the effect still gives them the card, so it's not as if you're denying them anything. Now they have to play the card right away instead of holding it in the hand. So against a control player, maybe, because control players like to stock up on their cards and like wait for you to do something before they actually use the card. But that's only ever applicable to the cards that they draw on their upkeep. Untap, upkeep, draw. Yeah. That's only ever the one card. That's not interesting. It's not very good. The Phyrexian version of it, not too bad. The Art Deco version of it is also really pretty, but it looks like Predator from the Predator movies, looking like this. God, this is such a good song. Widespread Thieving! Hideaway 5. Whenever you cast a multi-card spell, create a treasure token. Then you may pay 5. If you do, you may play the exile card without paying its mana cost. That is not a good effect. It comes out pretty soon, but it's really dependent on you playing multicolored cards, which you have to design a deck around in order to take advantage of this. The worst thing is, it doesn't help you board state outside of that, and you need all 5 colors in order to use the hideaway spell. So potentially you can get something really expensive for relatively cheap. But there are better ways to cheat something like that out. And since you only get that one hideaway, when this champion enters the battlefield no other time, it's not as if it's a repeating effect. This song is called Until the City's Burning. It's part of the original soundtracks for Streets of New Capenna. It's a hell of a beat. God, I love that. Witty Roastmaker, Alliance. 3 mana for 3/2, which is already pretty good. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, Witty Roastmaster deals 1 damage to each opponent. This is potentially breakable. I feel like if you're already in a situation where you're generating a lot of tokens, having Witty Roastmaster turn all those tokens into pure damage, imagine playing this into a squirrel combo, generating infinite amount of squirrels, and thereby dealing infinite amount of damage to each opponent. Like, this can get out of hand really, really rapidly with the right setup. It's a bit of a combo card. But if you can generate an infinite number of creatures, you deal an infinite number of damage. And at the end, it's still a 3/2 body for 3. You play this limited just for the stats alone. Yeah, there's definitely some kind of format for this. If you can generate goblins, you can turn Roastmaster into a flamethrower. And finally, the very last red card for tonight is Wrecking Crew for 5 mana, 4/5, reach, trample, which is not very playable and constructed, but makes this a very significant threat in limited. Because the trample is already really good, but then you have the ability to tear birds out of the sky. And given that flyers tend to be a little on the weekend, usually they max out at like 3/3. Usually it's going to be like 2/2 or less. Like 4/5 reach trample for 5 is a really relevant stat. They built the neighborhood, they know its weak points, they know all the hiding places. When they come for you, they'll find you and bring the roof down on your head. That is a nice card to end the night with. Wrecking Crew is absolutely 100% limited playable, and it might even make the game very, very difficult once it comes out. Not too bad. Not too bad. Labor Par. Alright. Tomorrow we'll be doing, what was it? Green, multicolored, and artifacts, and I expect the multicolored section to take up the most time because that's where all the really, really interesting cards are. So yeah, looking forward to that tonight. How many people do we have watching today? Just like 1 or 2 of us. So I won't kick you out to any raids tonight, but do expect the finale of this analysis tomorrow. And that will be all. Thank you for watching, GG especially. And as always, my friends, eat well.